right, welcome back. I have with me Benay Sager. He's the Executive Director at Debt Busters. And of course, he's interested in the area of debt, and he helps South African consumers who've been struggling to manage their financial affairs. Thank you very much for joining us, Benay. So let's just recap on the impact inflation had on South Africans during the year 2024. Now, we're now sort of in the first quarter of 2025.
Yeah, it's been significant. I think if you think about where we were a year ago, food inflation was very high. And I think towards the end of the year, it tapered somewhat. But food inflation is still about 30% higher than what, we publish as inflation figures. So if CPI is 4%, food inflation is much higher than that. Electricity is even higher than that. It's actually 2.5 times more. So it's about 10 to 12%. So when you look at the basket of goods that ordinary South Africans are using, how much they're spending their money on, actually the impact of inflation is far higher than I think the published figures. And I think that's what we're seeing with the consumers.
Yeah. So you will have been watching very closely the debate around VAT, after we heard that National Treasury wanted to raise VAT by 2 percentage points. It came as a real shocker, and of course now we don't expect that, but there's talk that we may see some sort of increase on the table, whether it's 0.5 or whatever it may be. But what is your view around that, especially given what you know around how the South African consumer has been coping with the cost of living already?
Yeah, it's been very significant. I think there will be, as you said, there will probably be some VAT increase, hopefully minor compared to the last time we were told. And we're hoping that if that does take into effect, that what they call as zero-rated goods, the range of goods where we don't pay VAT on, would be expanded, particularly to help the poor. But ultimately, actually, we need things like electricity and other things, if I can dare say, with petrol and electricity prices to be much more stable than they have been over the last several years. So the VAT will have an impact, hopefully much more minor than we thought before. But when you factor in the fact that many of our consumers are probably spending more than 50% of whatever is left after debt repayments on food, that's very significant. So we're hoping that there will be some measures in place to protect the general population against significant VAT increases, particularly on food.
So we know that you do quarterly surveys on how consumers are doing and so on. What about the issue of energy, the issue of electricity? Those tariffs, they keep on going up. Every 3 years, Eskom gets some sort of increase, usually above inflation, usually not what they actually want, which is ridiculous. They wanted something like 36% for this particular year. But how are those increases affecting the household? And like you say, we need stability. Presumably, they're not sustainable.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If you look at the last several years, electricity price increases have been double digit. And coming into effect, another one on the 1st of April, we are told it's 12%. But what you see is overall, electricity is increasing above and beyond inflation 2.5 times more. So we're basically unable to keep up. And what we've seen is people are spending about now 11% of their take-home pay on energy-related expenses. But there's the other side of the coin, which is the load shedding. Now, we have been, if I can say, mostly blessed this year. Very little load shedding, in fact, going back 12 months. But for the time where we had really severe load shedding, we also had a lot of small businesses, which tend to be generally funded by individuals themselves. They had to put up the money themselves to find out alternative ways of supplying electricity. If you are in the business of, let's say, selling ice creams on the side of the road to kids coming out of school, it's really, really difficult to make that work. And I think with load shedding going away, some of those funds that would have been channeled to putting the alternative measures in place, we're also seeing that people are now able to invest those into other employment things, which is actually a good thing. So we're hoping that at the same time as stabilizing electricity prices, we're going to stabilize the electricity supply. Both are very important.
Yeah. And then let's just look at this overall situation that we're in. It's the 12th of March. We were supposed to have a budget on the 19th of February. It was abrupt, it was unexpected. We were all shocked as this thing didn't get tabled. But of course, people have had time to absorb what has happened. Some people are saying it's actually quite positive for democracy because for the longest time we've had the ANC majority government, and really a finance minister's word is, once he says, I'm doing this, it's done. People just rubber stamp it. To what extent do you think this is going to be good for South Africans, that there's going to be more interrogation of very important budget documents, which ultimately should speak to the betterment of South Africa as a whole?
Yeah, our budget process has generally been internationally recognized as being one of the most transparent. We normally have excellent information around the budget. The finance minister probably has the toughest job in the country. He has to satisfy 38 national government departments, 9 provinces, and dozens of municipalities with a finite amount of money. So what he and his team are trying to do is balance the money that's coming in with the money that needs to be borrowed and what needs to be cut in terms of expenditures. And I think we are hoping to see both a bit of an increase in terms of VAT, as we said, but also we're hoping to see some serious focus on the expenditures, particularly because, as you said, the government is now a coalition government, and I think there will be different views on how to make sure that the government works for us for service delivery. I think that's going to be quite an important theme. And in the parliament, because now we have a different balance, as you say, things get interrogated more often. Committees are not always run by the same party in terms of majority, but there's more of a balance, and I think we are seeing already much more rich discussions, much more growth-orientated discussions about the policy. So I think it's all great for the country.
Super. Thank you so much, Benay, for speaking to us. As always, that was Benay Sager, Executive Head at Debt Busters.